different strength, I guess, on the Moderna.
And I felt fine. Terry got hers and she was a little icky the day after. It felt like I got a flu shot, which I did get a flu shot at the same time, so I don't know which one it was.
Yeah, I got mine yesterday too.
Yeah, they were like, do you want to use different arms for your shot? I go, no. I go, if I'm going to have one bad arm, I'm going to have one bad arm and two bad sore arms.
Is Ollie old enough?
He's 5, yeah. I've been emotionally preparing him for it, but he's
Yeah.
he's already randomly brought it up. I don't want to get a shot.
Yeah.
And I'm like, buddy, this is like.
He just makes it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, my 8-year-old granddaughters both want to get the shot.
Yeah, that's good. Well, the problem is I brought him in like a week before kindergarten started, and I forgot they're giving him shots. I told him there would be no shots, and we got in there, and she was like, "Oh, you've got 3 shots you gotta do," and I was like, "God!" And he just like, they had to took 2 nurses.
Yeah. Yeah.
But isn't it amazing? They get all these shots and nobody complains, nobody says anything.
I know.
And then you say, "Oh, do you want to not die from COVID?" And they go, "Oh, look, I can't do that."
I know, it's definitely funny. I mean, you know,
Some states want to get rid of all vaccines.
I've heard about that. I know that's a troubling backflow. Like,
Yeah, let's bring back measles, mumps, rubella.
I know.
Sure, I had such fun with those.
yeah.
All right, we're going to get started. Hi, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the joint meeting of the Town Council and the Planning Board for Newmarket. And we will start, as always, with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So thanks to everyone for being here tonight. I wanted to start, we have like a pretty set agenda, but I wanted to start with introductions. It is, we only meet as 2 boards once a year, so it's always helpful to introduce each other, and I will start on this end. If you just want to say like your name, and then we kind of sat council to planning board, but if you could say what group you represent, and that's it. Thanks.
John Dever, Town
I'm a member of the planning board and
Sit in the middle.
Brian Ward, Town Council.
I'm Tony Weinstein, and I'm the town council chair.
For those of you who met, I'm Steve Fournier, the town manager.
I'm Katana Conley, on the town council. I did not know you in teams.
You got traded.
Val Shelton, vice chair of the planning board.
Mark Bachman, chair of the planning board.
Diane Hardy, town planner.
Tim Rossignol, Planning Board.
Jeff Goldnoff, Planning Board, and Planning Board Rep to Conservation Commission.
Thank you. And so we will just go ahead and get started. We have a presentation tonight about the economic development from our economic development consultant, and I will let you introduce yourself and
Great.
talk and take it away.
Okay, and wait, my clicker get back to the computer in a second. I have 37 slides in 19 minutes, so we're going to move right along here. I want to make sure I included a lot of stuff, so that if you want to look at stuff later or share with other people, it's there and kind of get you through. But I'm going to go through fast, so feel free to slow me down, or we have some time at the end for questions. Really happy to say this is my 3rd time back in front of the joint committee, and thank you for the chance to do this. It's been really great to work with the town. We've had a lot of chances to meet a lot of great people. I usually try to save something like this to the close, but I'll forget, so I want to make sure I thank the boards, all the introductions people have made, and it's been great to work with Wendy, Diane, and Steve. They've been really great to sort of help us here on the local side. So, Stu Barnett, ADG is in Concord. We're kind of project managers in both the land use regulation saw up there, the north gateway, the west gateway, and the south gateway. Next, please. The intent was to identify them, clarify them, and then try to give some sense of what the character could be and how they could work together, and not just have three kind of standalone things. And a gateway is something that, as the term says, lets you know you're coming to a special place. So it has some kind of a theme, has some kind of an attraction. It says, oh, I've arrived someplace that's interesting, someplace that I want to be or I want to know more about. So the first one was the North Gateway. We started here. The intent of this was to help the town visualize and perhaps go farther about how to take Main Street and extend it north, have that kind of funky village feel, have it go farther north. At the same time, utilize the sections going toward the Great Bay in a way that's complementary with the natural resource outdoor amenity that it is in the river on the west side of Main Street. So I'll show you more in a second on that. Next, please. So on each of these sites, we did sort of a standard environmental, traffic, land ownership, zoning, regulation considerations. Here is hydric soils, floodways, wetland. Next, please. Land use, this was what's open, what isn't, what's existing parkland, how much space was available. You'll notice the sort of darks red in the middle. There is a couple parcels that are pretty significant in their size that are undeveloped here. They've had development proposals to you before. We'll tell you later, one of the constraints is traffic, because if these end up being large, everybody goes out at 8 o'clock in the morning, everybody comes home at 5 in the evening. There's a couple traffic issues that would make this hard to develop, so we'll talk a little bit about where you might want to go about having do something that doesn't generate so much peak traffic. So here's the bottlenecks of Bay Road and the 108 bridge. So there's a lot of potential space that would be coming out in a couple fairly tight spots. And again, there's more maps and information on each of these. Next, please. We're looking at the regulatory considerations. A couple things from the west. The river and the wetlands limit the depth. So even though the lots look pretty deep, the development potential is pretty close to the road. And plus, especially as you get closer to town, the lots are very small. So if you're trying to do something that's thematic and coherent, it's tougher when we have a bunch of different owners with a bunch of different spots. And then, so our first recommendations for this was to look at the zoning, look at what the potential build out was, future traffic demands, and then you'll see this in all three of them. Encourage collaboration, development amongst the property owners, so you can talk about perhaps linking 2 or 3 sites together, either under one ownership or in some kind of memorandum of understanding with the town and the owners of if someone does this, we'll do this. So a potential quality development doesn't have to go chase each one. You've got some kind of dialogue ahead. Next, please. The West Gateway, you can see actually from the aerial map here, you can see the basically all that light is the sand pits. That's kind of where we are. Okay. And you can see it's also a very large area, and it's probably the least developed of the three. Next, please. So again, we looked at aquifers, floodways, wetlands, and while there's some of each, for the most part, this area did not have the environmental constraints that the north did. And that makes sense if you think about how much it's a big sand pit, which is typically great drainage, all that kind of stuff. Next, please. In all these parcels, and anytime the town talks about what's good to do with someplace, you have to remember that probably 80% of the land we're talking about is privately owned. In the South Gateway, we'll talk about a pretty big piece that the town owns, but for the most part, you're talking about land that somebody else owns. So that was one of the reasons we wanted to make sure we talked to property owners as we went here, so that no one thought the town was going to do eminent domain and take over half the town. So you have to be considering that all along. So we looked at the property ownership and then how much of the properties were developed and undeveloped. The next one, please. Infrastructure considerations. One of the big constraints here and also in the south, we'll talk about in a second, is it's not serviced with sewer and water. Having sewer and water allows much higher levels of density, and it allows, doesn't guarantee, but allows much better planning because you can do more clustering. You don't have to have so much land used for septic fields and wells. You can do some things you can't do if you don't do it. The question for here and for the south is, of course, how do you pay for that? And we'll talk a little bit about that. But generally, we're saying the additional tax revenues probably coming from either would be sufficient, along with private participation, to pay for water and sewer extensions. But that's something we want to look into more. Looked at the first cut here was to do some zoning changes, which I think.
Excuse me, the mic.
Sorry.
Especially for people at home.
Yeah, I guess it's okay. I'm sorry, I'm dropping it. Excuse me. So we looked at the traffic flows and then focused on the project site being that big area in the middle, and see what we could do with that. And then next slide, please. And here's where we're proposing a potential tax income and finance district, which would next slide, please. Allow for the extension of the water and sewer that's partially out there now, with the proposed new revenue coming from a TIF district. And I'd be very happy to quickly describe what a TIF district is, or I could spend more time with it. But one of the things we've suggested to this group before is if you adopt a district, it doesn't mean you have to spend anything. People often think that so we often recommend is adopt a district that allows you to start realizing what the increment could be, gives you some sense of what kind of revenues may come in without necessarily spending a lot of money on capital improvements that are kind of, if they build it, they'll come. In other words, we're suggesting what we call TIF light, that you put a district in place, see what happens, and then you know what revenue is coming in versus what might come in, instead of spending it and hoping they come. And then, again, extend the water and sewer. Okay, next one, please. And then the other one is, and you'll see this again in the south, is we propose that the whole area be developed as thematically a whole. This is sort of a picture of how it could work in planar blobs. You can control the entry points. You control internal traffic a lot better. We also did a subdivision, sort of a mock subdivision of what it would look like if you did it individually, and it is decidedly unimpressive. It's okay and it's legal, but it's just a couple 12,000 square foot industrial buildings and a couple single family houses and stuff if you met all the current zoning things and everybody acted independently. So again, as here and in the south, if there's a way of maybe getting people to work on it together, that everybody could win. Okay, next one, please. And then the idea of this sort of self-contained village. Remember, we're trying to have housing, but we're also trying not to have everybody jump in a car every time they need to do something. Have it be a special place. We believe very strongly in sort of 3-generational housing where grandparents, parents, and grandkids can all live in the same place. It isn't, just a senior housing or just starter housing, but you can actually have families live in the same thing. So what we want to do is point out examples where there are communities where, in addition to the housing, there's also amenities there. So you don't have to jump in a car every time you want to go to an ATM machine or pick up a half gallon of milk or something like that. So 3 that we came up with. One is close by. Next one, please. Which is Point Place in Dover. It's 64 acres, which is fairly close to the acreage here. And it has a mixture of housing types, prices, has some retail, has some professional like medical offices, dentists, that kind of stuff. And it's not far from here if you want to go
kind of get a look-see at what it could be. Next one is a place in, where is this, in Georgia? Yeah, Georgia, Peachtree City. Again, a similar size, and again, you see there's a mixture of apartments, office development, and 2 or 3 different types of housing units. And in all of these, you'll see a focus on neighborhood parks, green spaces, trails, paths. Again, one of the nice things about trying to do a lot of individual parcels together is you can start doing amenities that everybody can use, including the public, such as bike path connecting and using trails instead of keep bumping into, no trespassing signs as you cross property lines. And the third one is Rock Row, which since we did this a year and a half ago has come even farther. It's outside of Portland, and it's right now sort of being, it's a little bit bigger in scale. It's very much like the Tuscan Village in Salem, that same kind of a retail mixed use project. So it's a little bit bigger and glitzier than I think we would think here. But it's another example of course, they also have water. But you can see there's a whole complex of different things: grocery, retail, medical, residential units, and then a lot of open space.
I think they just announced a convention center as well.
And I'm sorry, and convention center too, meeting center, right. Next one, please. And then the South Gateway. Next one, please. Again, this is just the different property considerations. What is what. Sorry, it's all two-dimensional kind of planner stuff, but I will focus in a minute on the roughly the triangle from the railroad track over here. So the gray, purple, gray, that'll be a piece we'll talk about in a minute, because that's the 2 of those 3 parcels are the ones that are town-owned and you have some control over. Next one, please. Again, then here's the west side of the railroad track, east side of 108, west side of 108, looking at the different parcels. Next one, please. And then here is what I just talked about. In addition to the existing users at the very southern Newfields line, which is in the last year has become more important. And again, the gray, purple gray is the undeveloped town and undeveloped private land. And that's, again, one of the questions that's going to be coming up is how do you get the town and private owners to work perhaps collaboratively. Next, please. And then here's a very quick thing about some of the constraints, impediments on the site. The railroad is tough to cross, as everybody knows. New Roads is a fairly quiet neighborhood road, so you want to make sure that any impact on that neighborhood is certainly manageable. And then the sort of blue blob in the middle is the less attractive land because of either wetlands or topography. And so if you kind of look quickly, you can see the middle piece has less value from that perspective than the 2 town pieces, but it's right in the middle. So if you look at one and not the other, they don't work real well one-on-one, but if you can start looking at them together, you go, ooh, this is kind of, we could work around some things. Next, please. So, and then here's where we are in the area. Distance to Portsmouth as far as bike trails and other amenities. And the Pan Am thing is obviously not going to go away anytime soon, but even since this, there's been some rather significant investment in rail trail kind of stuff. Next. So we did 2 concepts here, just to kind of know what could happen. One is a fairly conventional subdivision, which complies with your zoning without just everybody just going ahead and doing their own thing. Next, please. The picture on the right is the picture of the road coming in from Newfields. You can see how much the trees drop off to the right. That's that. We're looking at where this red circle is in the bottom. And takes you into that B1 area, which is where the town's talked about the solar farm. The problem with that drop-off is it means you have a long access road coming in, and by the time you get into the grade level, you basically cut your own parcel in half getting there. So again, that's one of the reasons we were trying to find a way to combine the parcels. So if you can combine the parcels thematically, have some access from New Road. That makes that parcel much more interesting. But as a conventional subdivision, it can work, but you can see you're probably not going to get much density. And it's interesting. I'll show you on a slide in a minute because we have it as a sub map. But there's been, with Diane, I think 3 either actual applications or suggested applications to develop that land as basically single-family homes. And it's questionable how developable that land is with the subsoils. Very low density. It certainly doesn't do much as far as a gateway. If you just did it the way if everybody does their own thing. Next. So one of the things we came up with a concept was multi-use outdoor recreational park, something that again connects to the outside, the natural resource features of the community. I will point out in this and the next slide, we did this assuming there would not be water and sewer, and we're going to come back in a minute and say we think there should be water and sewer. So this use is a very low impact for water and sewer, but it does give you an amenity. The outdoor recreation, paid outdoor recreation, is a growth industry. Certainly post-pandemic, it's even much more so. And these properties do have commercial sites on them. They have restaurants, pubs, RV trailer rentals and stuff. So it isn't like saying a big town park. It's a commercial amenity. I don't think I would recommend snowmobiling there, but I think that picture got in there anyway. Next one, please. And then here's sort of a different concept on almost the same acreage in Windsor, Vermont. Windsor, Vermont's just the river on the right is the Connecticut River, so that's the eastern edge of Vermont. And if you go another 10 miles north, you'll run into Hanover, New Hampshire, or Lebanon. And just purely by coincidence, that used to be an industrial park, and it was, I think, maybe the first or second park I worked on a long time ago. But it basically took an area that was a somewhat underperforming industrial park and made it into this eco park. And so Simon & Pierce Glassworks is up at the top. He's actually expanded twice. There's down the very bottom is Harpoon Brewery, and now brewery and restaurant, a cheese company. You can see there's 2 or 3 other things. One of the questions about your south gateway is what do you do about the railroad track? And you can see in the picture on the left, that's a railroad track, which they've done it underneath. Underneath goes over to the what's called a sculpture park, and it's a place for families to take kids and stuff, and they wander around and get lost, and maybe you find your kid, take them home. And it's very popular. It's right off. It's 10 minutes off the interstate. And it's again, it's a whole destination now from what used to be a fairly unattractive industrial park. Next one. So what we sort of talked about again was, using this area for the undeveloped land for some kind of a multi-use outdoor recreational park. I think it has a lot of potential there. We could go into the market research more if you want. But any kind of mixed use that throws some degree of destination, market rate housing, flex space, and amenities that are outdoors are doing very well these days. Also, that allows you to take several of the existing things that are right at the town line, the rail station, the bike trail, the ballroom, the country club, and they all become the exercise center all becomes a series of amenities that sort of anchor that gateway. And I guess I'll go one more slide before I'll come back to make a point. Again, here's some other ones that are like that. The phenomena of outdoor commercial recreation mixed use is pretty national. And these all have a bicycling component to them. Anything like this would also have just walking trails and other amenities too. And one more. Again, you can see how it fits in. This also goes back to that slide I had of where the one piece of land didn't have a lot of building potential, but it does have potential for things like this. So you could actually start putting the built things on your land and the recreational stuff on the private land, and kind of maximize both. And next, please. So this is one of the two new slides, and this is those two parcels again. And if you look carefully, you'll see the little red lines from earlier subdivision concepts that shows a cul-de-sac going up there with single-family houses. And you look down here in the red, and you can see another one that was proposed. This is actually 3 overlays of 3 different proposals that came into the planning office over the last 15 years. And you can see most of the proposed work is being proposed for right on top of the wetland soils. And it's not very high density. It's cul-de-sacs, which nobody likes from any perspective, owner or public safety. So again, the private by itself could work for something, but obviously it hasn't yet, and there's some good reasons for that. However, if you start looking at that with the surrounding blue areas that are owned by the town, then that whole concept of some kind of an outdoor mixed use mixture of things is at least more feasible than either of them. One thing Steve did ask us to do is if we were not successful in getting cooperation from the public or private owners, are there things the town could do by itself? The answer is yes. Probably not as attractive, but I don't think anybody, it's not either or. It's just I think this could be probably a preferable place at least to try to start. And I'm going to do, I think, one more, which is recommended next steps. And I'm 6 minutes over. So on the South Gateway, and by the way, South Gateway was one we worked on this year, so we spent more time on that. Okay, that's why we're sort of focused on that. Again, a collective action could benefit all. You have the private owners that own the land that could be developed, and for both development and also for cost sharing. This is not asking the town to pay for things that developer should pay for or anything like that. Through memorandums of understanding or MOUs. Look at getting water and sewer infrastructure put into the strip for 3 users, for 3 reasons. One, it allows that underdeveloped land to have much higher potential, much higher density, much better planning. You have some existing users, I think 3 that I know of, that are at the southern tip, all of who are looking at expensive upgrades to their septic fields. They would much rather connect to a municipal system. Once they build their new septic fields, you're not going to see them again. So the timing is a good time to talk about that. And that also allows them to do some stuff. It would be kind of cool, like the railroad station and some other things. And then again, having public water and sewer both allows you to do better planning, but also allows you to control what happens better because they need your hookup. And then on financing, look at TIF district. We think the new revenues would be more than enough. If you also looked at grants, great time to be looking for grants right now, both environmental grants, housing, everybody's trying to invest in housing, and economic development because you'd have some interesting job creation coming out of it. One of the things that's happened last year is the question, hopefully, of a potential new field partnership. So as they go north, you go south, and maybe we can find a way to cost share there. And as I mentioned, there are existing users who would like very much to talk about paying the town what it would cost them. Well, I'm sure they'd be happy to not pay the town anything, but are open to the idea that instead of buying a new septic field, putting that money into cost sharing on a sewer line. West Gateway, just continue to look for development opportunities, both from the seller and the buyer's perspective. That's sort of a village concept, and hopefully it doesn't get parceled off into smaller pieces before that can be looked at. And then, again, we did a quick back of envelope, and it looked like a water and sewer extension there might be able to pay for itself with new TIF funds generated. And then our North Gateway, development out there could help because it would add to the in-town viability or vitality, but you're going to look for things that have low peak traffic developments. So, 300 apartments for working families, everybody drives out at 8 o'clock in the morning, everybody comes back, is not ideal. You want to try to do a development that has some stickiness where people are staying, or the release times are different and such, and maybe a lower density, and have some of that made up by more commercial and less residential. And in our North Gateway presentation, we spent a lot of time on this, making sure it stays connected to the natural resource network out there, the access to Great Bay, to the trails, and then, I guess this mentioned, look for a mixture of uses, because that's going to be more something that adds vitality to the downtown than you just have one big senior center or one big supermarket or one big institution or something. And then overall, and this is my finish, I guess we're suggesting that the town has a lot of potential to make good things happen in all three gateways, but it might need to think a little bit differently. In that, number one, have dialogue with the owners and potential developers. Dialogue doesn't mean promises. It doesn't mean any commitments. It just means, what do you think? And here's what we're trying to do. For that, I think you're going to need to assign a lead. So is it Steve? Is it Diane? Is it the Economic Development Committee? Is it the Select Board? But there should be somebody who can kind of talk to people and stay up on what those dialogues are. Make sure you share the gateway vision so people know what you're talking about, and share it amongst yourself. If you think it's good, bad, that's why we're presenting, and update it as it makes sense. Your zoning and land use regs, they can always use a tune-up, especially if we keep bumping into the same issues. One suggestion that you can consider, it's a little bit more aggressive than some places but I would like to suggest it, is issuing basically a condition pre-approval. So you're looking at an area and saying to somebody, if you meet our conditions, we want this kind of amenity package, we want this, we want this, we want this, you can have a permit. So you take all of that time and money of what if away, and you get what you want at the same time. It's a little bit risky, because what if they don't deliver and you have performance bonds and stuff. But if you can tell most developers, I can cut 6 months to a year out of your process and cut 5 or 10% of permitting cost, time, and engineering costs, that should get you some amenities on the other side. So it's a strategy that's makes some people a little bit nervous, because they see it as almost like a collusion thing. But again, I'm stressing this is dialogue and not commitments. And then I'll finish with this. Continue to convene and encourage what you desire, while also ensuring quality. So it's not, you're encouraging things to happen, but you're also encouraging that your standards be met. And kind of a goofy way of saying that is, in addition to playing good defense by regulations and codes and rules, play a little good offense and say, we want to make something happen good as much as we want to not make something bad happen. I think that was like a triple negative. Okay, so 5 minutes over. Thanks. A lot to present. These are available, and each of these gateways had a separate full report, so we could really jam up your PCs with PowerPoints if you want sometime. Again, thanks very much for a chance to work with you guys. Town has a lot of potential, and it's been great fun. Thanks. So Q&A, if you have any.
I'm going to guess if there are some questions. So, I'll start with that.
So, thanks. So, Sue, just a quick question, maybe in your additional documentation. Have you done fiscal and economic impacts to each of the gateways as to if the concepts were implemented, what the impact on the tax base would be?
Preliminary, because
has that data been actually generated? Is that available?
and I guess I'm saying not in depth, because that would be a lot more. But what we're suggesting is almost always property tax positive. It's almost impossible to do what we've done without it having a positive impact to your
So
tax
how
rate.
would you rate those three gateways relative to the highest positive impact?
West to become first for the, I think, because you go from almost next to nothing to something pretty substantial. And then it's 50-50. The north probably does not have much potential unless you can find something to do with that vacant land that isn't going to mess up the traffic too bad. And the south, the big thing is how much can you work with private owners. But the west is, because it's so undervalued. If you ran water and sewer, if you don't have water and sewer, then you get something, but you wouldn't see the same impact.
So something like a bike park, would that be owned by the town, or would that be privately owned? Would that little of both?
I would think the whole operation would definitely be commercial.
Okay.
And the only reason I'm hesitating on that is you may want to do things like where the town owns something as part of we own this and you own this, but it's commercially operated. But it's definitely not. We're definitely not suggesting a town recreation park. So actually, who owns the land could go either way, but it's not something your town recreation department would be in charge of.
For example, a lot of municipalities do 30-year lease, 100-year lease.
Yeah, something like
on a
that.
piece of land. For example, Summersworth is a golf course that is private, the Oaks, but it's on a leased piece of land that the city owns, and it'll be reverted in 30 years.
And it's just also one. It reduces their property tax bill a little bit, but clearly a commercial enterprise would want to have enough control to make sure that they also weren't waiting for the town recreation department truck to get there if there's a snowstorm and.
So presumably there's companies that open bike parks. I guess it's just not something I ever thought about.
Yeah, that slide that showed 8 or 9 or 5 or 6 of them. Those are all commercial.
Oh, those are all separately owned. Okay.
Yes,
I thought that
yes.
was one.
Yes.
It's a huge business right now. There's some in Massachusetts. There's a large one in the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont. There are very few in the New Hampshire, in that middle area, which, I mean, I know people in Massachusetts drive to the Northeast Kingdom to go use theirs. I mean, just because the
Right.
one's down in Massachusetts.
Burke Mountain in Vermont has. It's actually its summer traffic now is substantially higher than its winter traffic, which is. I didn't understand it either until I first went there. Both, and they could be the same or different. Some communities have a not-for-profit that runs some of the cross-country skis, and the private runs like the restaurants and other things. So there's different combinations.
And part of that discussion too is it's passive recreation. It's not ATVs or motorbikes or those kind of situations. It's pedal bikes, cross-country running, skiing, snowshoeing,
trails, walking.
Right, those kind of items for that area. So you get, if there's not a bike race or some kind of event where people are just using it, there could be a cross-country or trail race out there. So it draws people in not only to use that, but also draws people after to go downtown, use some of the other facilities in the area.
And that's why you want. Got that first slide with the 3 centers, how they connect. So you can start thinking that a concentration of housing would be west, with some features that could feed both the other ways. We're pleased to be doing some work with the city of Berlin, which has the state ATV park in its backyard, and that's not at all. That works for them, but that would not work here at all. And that's not your image. That would just be. And then all the designs you saw for the residential had a lot of passive recreation, meaning paths that I would walk on. But that's why I like the idea of the 3 generations. So grandparents can walk with their grandkids and stuff without it, and have a lit place, well lit and safe, and without having to jump in a car, drive 30 minutes to go see your kids.
Right. And one of the things we've been discussing also is the impact on Ash Swamp Road. Ash Swamp is becoming a commuter road. It's a cut-through. And we're trying to make it not be a cut-through, that they need to use the correct roads. It's no longer this wooded country road out there. We need to be concerned about pedestrian safety out there as well, which includes sidewalks. at some point in time to connect it.
Yeah, and if you go back to the west one, we showed that sliver where we talked about maybe doing some rezoning and over time some infrastructure upgrades for safety.
It's a natural progression of the growth of the community.
Right.
That those roads that were once wooded
But I think most of the west would be coming into town on the north side,
right?
Versus because the village is the attraction, not getting out of the town. I mean, obviously some people are, but you're hoping that the in-town is going to be the attraction, so people are going to be going from west to east versus west to south. I would think more than not, but it depends what your product mix is, and so. Yeah.
Steve, what has been the initial reaction from the property owners?
Positive.
Agreed to talk?
Extremely positive. I was pleasantly surprised that first it's sort of like I thought there'd be like, why is the government coming in to tell me what to do with my land, versus we're just making suggestions and this is what we're looking at. And like, most of them said the West End was like, we've already been thinking about something similar.
Right.
But
it was that was more limited. What was that? I hope I'm not hitting a third rail. Was that the one that was going to be just like a senior nursing village and it had
something at one point?
It was very isolated.
Right.
It really didn't interact much, and this is hopefully our concept is a little bit more complementary.
I mean, the North End, that's common sense. A lot of them already said.
Yeah, we just had another conversation recently.
Right. And we had basically all the property owners on the South End. We met here once, and we also met at the ballroom.
At the ballroom, right.
Got hit with that pandemic in between, and they were very and they're gung ho. They want to get going. I know that the ballroom really wants to move forward.
Yeah,
So what would you say the next steps are to move some of these forward?
We would probably have to do a lot of the planning and council would be the zoning changes to make it palatable and make it easier for them to be able to do these developments.
We're suggesting is maintain that dialogue issue as one track, another track look at the zoning, a third track look at the financing, especially with the conversations you're having with Newfield, which just makes everything a little bit easier because you have that potential use, and then you have, I mean, there's a lot of grant funds that weren't available 2 years ago when we were talking about this. So when we first looked at this, we said, boy, I don't think we can show a good way of financing that to come down south. And I think, I mean, that's something you want to look at a little bit more, but, and then there's also, I'm in the weeds now, there's also some restrictions about how many TIFs you can have and how big the collective is. So we'd have to make sure that one didn't bump out the other. So.
But basically, earlier response, if we had to pick one to pursue first, we'll have to, it would be the
I would think that would be your conversation to have.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think the low-hanging fruit is the north. We just need to rezone it. Yep. Utilities are there. Roads already been improved. It's close to downtown. We just need to make sure, one of the items that we need to look at is bringing back a true discussion about mixed use. I know that a couple years ago, it was sort of derailed when that was brought up. I think it's, yeah.
It was part of the proposal of the M2A zone.
Right.
And the council at the time cut out the north and only painted the south.
Right, and then
So the structure of
gutted
that
it.
zoning is already there. It's
Right.
a matter of extending the district into that area that was proposed before.
And
I don't think we're gonna reinvent
No, I don't think we have to, but I think it's just we have to do it.
Move forward.
Right, we have to do it.
And the way things like this happen, in my experience and probably everybody else here, is that if people out there understand there is some interest in doing these gateways in a high quality, this is what we want, they're going to find you.
Yeah, and I think part of it also is I don't think we have it as bad, but there's still this notion that if you build any type of multi-family or rental or situation like that, that you're going to overpopulate the school. Let's go with two factors. One, school enrollment's declining, and two, none of those facilities bring a lot of children in any longer. They're either people just starting out in life, or at the other end, they don't want to deal with having to maintain things anymore, so they prefer to live in And they're very high end.
Yeah,
And that's
yeah.
the
I
thing,
mean,
it's not.
you don't want to say they don't allow it because that's
Yeah.
not legal. But what the reality is the old. When I went through planning school, is every house is 2.5 kids. You know, I don't know who the 0.5 kid was, but they all had one. And now, if it's 0.3 or something per housing unit, that's high. I've seen it as low as 0.2 in some estimations. And again, as Steve mentioned, capacity is not an issue. But that's clearly something your planning board would have to look at, just like everything else. The impacts of traffic,
Yeah, and that's
soils, the
what
whole
we're
thing.
saying tonight is that, from my perspective, the planning board get some feedback from the council on, because quite honestly, I know Val's gone through it, Diane has, I don't know if you guys have gone through it, but I'm not interested in spending a bunch of time on something to give it to the council and have them say no. You have the right to say no, but no offhand without even listening to it. So I think we want to get your input on what you'd like to have us focus on, and we can focus on that.
Right, and I think that that's where the council is as well.
Yeah.
There were a couple more hands up. Did you have a comment, Ryan?
Yes, it's basically about
Yes, sir.
the Westgate TIF district. You had said you would put it in, then we'd see along, see who bid, basically. How much time did you spend before we decided, okay, how much we're going to invest? A year, 2, 3, 5?
The concept is, just quickly, I guess a very quick answer is it depends on how much interest is generated. So if nobody looks, then you haven't spent any money, and you just say, okay, that we'll take it back off we'll take it back off the map. What oftentimes people hear TIF, they go, oh, you're going to spend $3 million of capital, and we're going to hope that people show up. What our suggestion is that we call it TIF Light, is put the district in place, start measuring the incremental gains, start measuring, if you can, try to spend some of the, get your engineering a little bit farther along. You've got, I think, Steve, like half of it was engineered a few years ago. But it allows the message to get out there that you're serious about maybe doing something without spending $2, $3, $4 million on a bond issue. If someone comes along and says, I will do this if you have it in, what you want to do is be as ready as you can. So if they say, but it has to be in 2 years, you don't say, oh, it's going to take us 5. So it's a little bit of a trade-off, but you can put the district in any time. It doesn't cost you anything. And that was, and then if you don't use the incremental revenue, you can always return it to the general fund.
Thank you. Just to follow up on that too is, remember that where we are now is not also the same place where our infrastructure needs. We have enough water now, especially after we have the next well going on shortly. The schools issue has been addressed. Really, the only issues that we need to address for the long term are our facilities in this building. We've been addressing the other ones, so we're in a good position to re-examine. We stopped a lot of things years ago because of the lack of water, the lack of the school facilities, but we're not there anymore.
And I understand your sewer capacity has,
we've got
and water
plenty of
capacity.
sewer as well.
So without getting too explicit, volume is good.
Yeah.
Because it's all in infrastructure. It's all fixed cost versus variable cost. So once you get the sunk fixed cost, you want traffic, because that's all how you pay for things.
No, it's been answered. Thank you.
You sure? Okay.
I do. And so recently I've been approached by 2 separate developers who had questions about this. And both of those were in the North Gateway. And one was more a mixed use type of, and I don't know a whole lot about the parcel that they were talking about. The other one is a larger parcel where they were talking about a bigger development, probably off the Bay Road area, or in that Dayton Road
Okay.
area. And so my question is, I guess, if we were to look at a bigger, any kind of development or higher density, wouldn't we want it closer to town versus further away from town? I understand the appeal of the West Gateway, and I happen to live out I live off of Ashland Road, so I understand kind of the area a little bit. But it feels to me, I think I
And it is, yeah.
Right, and I think you could very easily, it could almost be a part of Epic. It's almost closer to, I think it is actually probably
Okay.
closer to Epic than it is to Newmarket.
Right.
When I think about where I shop and
Right.
my daily things, maybe Newmarket, maybe Stratham, I
Right.
would probably a little less likely to go to Epic, but I
Right.
think that if I lived out closer to that intersection, I would go to Epic. I
Right.
wouldn't come to Newmarket. Versus some development opportunities that are walkable to town. And I understand the traffic concerns, but I guess I would think that some of that could be.
Oh, yeah. I guess I hope what I was answering is as far as I think more of a fiscal impact priority versus kind of a community development. Yeah, I think Steve just said it real well. I mean, you've got your infrastructure. That's kind of.
In the West Gateway, you're absolutely right. The attractiveness of it is not aimed at people who work in Portsmouth. It's people who work in Manchester. It's the access to 125 and being able to get that. It's more that. It's the west. It's looking west, not east.
So if you're talking about higher numbers over the next 10 years, you'll be able to get higher numbers in there than you would either north or south in an attractive way. But clearly north and south are more ready.
I did have another question. Sure. I'm actually just trying to visualize sort of what parcels we're talking about for the West Gateway.
Sand pits.
So, building on top of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's a design we could show you. It's in one of the things that certainly. Yes, ma'am.
I'd like this to be an opportunity for the town to also address workforce housing.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot of housing going in right now, but it's so out of reach of someone who wants to work at Johnny Boston or Good Juju. And I think this might be a really good time to talk about workforce housing. And where would that go? Where would it be? What would it look like?
Right. And that kind of is the point that West allows you to do much more units per dollar than perhaps some of the other places do.
And I hate to say that's one of those things where, again, 5-10 years ago, everybody said, okay, you're going to build a big facility like that, make it 55 plus. And you can't do that anymore. You're seeing what happens when you make it 55 plus. You don't have the workforce. You have empty jobs.
Yeah.
The pandemic just heightened it. The governor actually said the other day, he goes, if you're making it difficult to build that, if you think we have a bad economy, you're trying to grow your economy, but you're making it difficult to build that multi-family or affordable housing, then you're part of the problem. You're not part of the solution.
Yeah. And then one of the nice things about the South Gateway is because you own the land, you obviously have more control than you would just by regulation. So you can, not to suggest this, but you could say for $1, guess what you get, but you got to give us this, and this.
I'd like to expand on Tony's point, which is I believe that one of the reasons we're trying to get more housing and this kind of stuff is to expand the downtown. Because one of the town council's belief is that the downtown is the jewel and that we should be working on it, right? So if we're going to bring in a lot more people, then we should be doing something simultaneously downtown. And maybe we should have a central gateway or whatever. So as an example, we are putting in like 10 retail units near the Sinclair gas station, which is
Okay,
like
yeah.
an extension of downtown, right? And so I know there's a in Durham, all those places are empty and they just use it for the apartments above. But if those places become commercial, right, then there's an opportunity for us to maybe try to develop that, because across the street there's a McDonald's that isn't there,
Right,
that
right.
isn't used anymore. A lot of those little houses, really have a lot of capacity. I think we're not using.
Yeah,
And we could try to extend downtown, toward that area. I mean, we already have the retail stores,
Right.
in 3-4 years, I don't know.
Yeah.
Now he's saying 5 years, but at some point in the future, there's going to be a bunch of retail stores there.
Right. Yeah, and just because when we started this, the study area was whatever the street is, north, there's no reason we couldn't go another half mile south. From the Cheney Apartments up or something would, almost from the new Irving station, you start getting, that's starting to fill in.
Yeah.
So maybe it connects to the South Gateway, yeah, but you certainly could, there's no reason why, we just had to just look at something and that's where we drew the line. But there's no reason you couldn't come down farther. Because it clearly is a district. Clearly people go from here to here.
Yeah.
And, it's not like you go from a whole different
Yeah, but I
setting.
think rather than wait for something to happen there, maybe we should, exert some more control over what's happening there.
Yeah, we could extend the north south.
Yeah.
I think the gateways originally were defined by the town years ago. That's probably why the line is where it is, but it doesn't have to stay there. Am I right?
We've been working on promoting infill development in the urban core area,
Right.
which was part of the reason for the M2, which became the M2A zoning. But we did a comprehensive look in 2013 of the area south and then also north. And I think we need to maybe revisit those.
Sure.
But there's also a lot of opportunities for infill development
Yep,
that
yeah.
overlooked, and I think maybe we need to
Yeah, that's-
identify those within the urban core area where there's services available.
Yeah, the
where
water,
there's
sewer, the
opportunity for
traffic's here, right.
walkability and so forth.
Right.
And, identify that and see if we can provide some incentives so that maybe some of these lots can be developed within an area that is
Yeah, I think
serviced by.
some high-density housing here, that's walkable to downtown.
I think we need to understand, from the zoning perspective, we have expanded the downtown south through the M2A zone. The issue has been the economic feasibility of a developer being able to do the expansion. So in case in point, with the new one, the new rendition of concept that we just approved, we'll see if that comes to fruition. Because we don't know, if that's not gonna be economically development, if that developer can't get that development done, which is mixed use, an expansion of the downtown, then we really do have a problem that we need to readdress, because you have all of this other land in that area that we have approved other mixed-use concepts for and still have not come to fruition. So the zoning is already there. It's a matter of, it has not been economically feasible for these developers to actually implement those plans.
That would be an interesting discussion to have.
So is that a financing issue that the bank won't cover it because they don't think it's worth?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the cost to implement these is so extraordinary compared to the revenues that the developers can actually, acquire in order to basically support the development.
And that's new development, not infill, right?
All new development.
Okay. So again, going to Diane's point, then maybe
We've approved a couple of projects.
The first
They're
step
in the
is infill.
pipeline, including the Cheney development with the 28 units, and also there's one across the street where those little cottages are, and that's been approved for 11 residential units in the bottom floor for commercial and retail use. And he's been somewhat slow in coming forward with his project, but I believe he still anticipates
and
that will happen.
I'm
in the
guessing,
future.
now I'm out of what's happening locally, but statewide, we're seeing people region-wide doing some work in Maine where, when materials tripled, quadrupled in price, you saw a whole lot of things just jam on the brakes. So it might be part of that. So.
So in order to wrap up, we could spend another hour or 2 hours talking about these issues. But in order to wrap up this conversation tonight and move it forward, I won't speak on behalf of the council, but I will speak. And anybody can interrupt me. But I know that there has been a willingness from the council to really examine zoning issues. So I say that knowing that
like for instance, the unattached ADU, you know, that change, do you guys have to, I know you said 15 years ago you sent a letter to us that you wanted to change that ordinance, right?
There was discussion about that.
It was discussion.
It was part of that.
Well, and for instance, with the M2A and the expansion, do you have to rewrite all of that, or have you got it ready to go, or does that have to be updated?
No, it would all have to be updated. The M2A zone, I think, would be a pretty easy one to expand, you know, to rezone the B2 on the north corridor to M2A. To the B1 on the, on 108 north.
We have the
to
original M2,
M2A.
the planning board originally proposed an expansion of the M2 district. It wasn't an M2A, and that was sort of this hybrid that was created in order to get some kind of closure on it.
Was that for the mill, to get the mill done?
No, that was the
Different
one.
project.
No, that's the, okay.
So yes, we could bring that forward again fairly easily, dig it out of the file, tweak it a little bit. But we also need to look at the M2A, because I agree that, you know, some of the restrictions that were placed on the development really make it economically unfeasible to move forward. And again, that, we can work on that as well. So I wouldn't say it's a major effort.
Correct.
I guess I'm just curious how many things that you have potentially proposed that got shot down before that might now be more applicable, given the change in the school, change in the water system, and, I mean, it's annoying that you might have to.
To be honest, that's why, on behalf of staff, that's why we're here.
Yeah.
We're spinning our wheels because nobody wants to touch the stove again,
Yeah.
in lack of a better term. So I think it's time to say, stove's off, you can touch it.
I just wanted to echo Councilor Sanders' admonition to make sure that we're thinking about not just mixed use, but workforce housing and affordable housing, not getting sucked into the everything has to be over 55 kind of trap, and really thinking a little bit proactively and holistically rather than wait for what comes to us, but really, you know, really putting something out there that kind of realizes a vision of some more of these integrated developments.
Well, when we start talking about, I know that when you propose zoning changes, there's public hearings and opportunity for public input, and I feel like we have some of those sessions, and have the ability to workshop some of this and have input from all the different stakeholders, especially if we can all be in one room. I just think it's so helpful. I remember, I go back to the visioning work that we did with the
2015.
Regional Planning Commission, which was so, I mean, to this day, I think about that and how impactful that was for me as a resident.
We're going to try to have another one of these meetings so we can remember in the future,
And I think the planning board heard from the council that they're willing to work. Now it's back in the planning board's court to determine.
Yeah, and I personally, I heard what I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
So I have no issue going to the planning board and trying to get some things moving forward. I just didn't want to spin wheels, so I think that's fine.
Yeah, and just remember, zoning was recommendation 3. The first one was dialogue. So remember, offense and defense.
Yeah, I just want to say one more thing, which was that, you know, we started a parking commission 6 months ago, and it was kind of funny because we're tossing around these ideas about where we'd put more parking, and there's just really not any great places, you know? So, you know, I've definitely, like, would love to see more density within walking distance of downtown. Just less cars would be better for everyone, I think. And I mean, that's one thing that's kind of, you know, annoys me about, you've got all these apartments on Cherry Hill that are great, you know, a lot of density, but they're just like slightly too far for those people to walk, and there's not like a, you know, there's not like 1,000 people walking off that hill every night, which would be awesome for downtown, but it's just not quite, it's a little bit too far. So, I mean, that's just, I think, something to keep in mind. You know, that's just a fact. I don't think we're going to have a parking garage or space for more parking. So, to my mind, that sort of makes sense to just to keep that like in mind, that, you know, if we do something that's going to attract people to town, we have to make sure there's somewhere for them to park. And if they're living, you know, it'd be nice if they could walk to town, I guess.
And that's again why you want the living places also to have some degree of amenities, so they're not getting a car every time they want to do anything.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, part of it is we have to approve projects without a lot of parking.
Yeah.
You can do it nowadays.
Right.
You know, if you build a lot of parking spaces, people with cars will move in. And I'm working on a couple of projects, one where they have 20% of the units, 100 units, there's only 20 parking spots. And they won't be full because people know there's no parking. The people that are buying the places will, and there's public transportation too, which helps. But if you're near downtown, you can do stuff like that.
Yeah.
The notion is that from the 80s to the 2000s, we built every building for, like they built a church for Christmas and Easter.
Yeah.
You put enough parking in there that you have all these vast, you see it every Walmart, every grocery store that is only, like the first 4 rows are filled, but the rest of them have to park. And you don't need that.
And the only reason they were built like that is because the towns required them to be built like that.
Great dialogue, and thanks.
Thank you so much.
Okay, it's been a pleasure working with everyone.
Thank you, Stu.
Hope everybody has a safe and productive holiday season. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Steve.
you.
Thank you guys too. Thank you very much. That was very productive.
for all.
I swear it feels like this wall is getting closer to us. We will start with public forum, but seeing as how there is no member of the public here, I will close public forum at, I don't have my glasses on.
7-Eleven.
Thank you, 7-Eleven. I will get my glasses so that I can see. So the public forum is closed, and the next we have public hearing. And so we have a public hearing tonight for Resolution 2021-2022-11, and that's the Kingsman Masonic Block Tax Incentive. And again, seeing that there is no one,
Do you want me to just
sure,
explain at the
please.
time? Just for the public, what the 79E application has come in for the Kingman Block, which houses Crack Skulls. Basically what a 79E application is that if a building is considered important to the community for historic purposes or now economic development purposes, for housing purposes, they're allowed to receive tax breaks on development they do. We basically freeze the value of the building what it is today, and we do not tax them on the additional value that they put into it for a period of time. Our policy has always been 3 years per category, except, and they've asked for 10. We do not give out 10 usually. If you see in my recommendation, my report, I recommend that we go down to 7 for that to approve that application. So there'll probably be if the council agrees with my recommendation, there'd need to be an amendment to the resolution to shrink that.
Just to be clear, in the documents, it says 11 years.
He requested 11, I said 7.
So I will close the public, there's no member of the public here, so I will close the public hearing at 7:13. And then we will deliberate on that when it comes up in the resolutions in the second reading. Next, we have the acceptance of minutes, and we have 2 meetings to approve, 2 meeting minutes. The first is from our October 20th regular meeting, and I would accept a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes for the October 20th, 2021 meeting.
I'll second. Were there any questions or changes to those minutes? Seeing none, if you could call the roll, please.
Council Brayden?
Aye.
Council Craig?
Aye.
Council Blackstone?
Aye.
Council Ward?
Aye.
Council Conley? Aye. Council Sanders?
Aye.
Council Weinstein?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. And then the next set of minutes is from our October 23rd budget workshop, and I would accept a motion to approve those.
I'll make a motion to approve the October 23rd, 2021 town budget workshop minutes. I'll second.
Any questions, changes? Seeing none, if you could call the roll, please.
Council Brayden?
Aye.
Council Craig?
Aye.
Council Blackstone?
Aye.
Council Ward?
Aye.
Council Conley? Aye. Council Sanders?
Aye.
Council Weinstein?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. And next, we have the town manager's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just an update on COVID-19 and vaccine. As of October 28th, there were 5 active cases in the community. We've had 716, or 7.5% of the town population, contract COVID-19. Our health region in Rockingham County still have substantial levels of community transmission. Seacoast Health region has seen a 3.7% increase in new cases over the past week. However, this is down. It was previously up at 5.6%. So we are seeing a little bit of a either leveling or reduction in some of the cases in this area. As for vaccinations, well, we have been seeing very little in new vaccination. We have hit 60% of the community vaccinated with at least 1 shot. There was a slight uptick. As you're aware, boosters have now been approved for all vaccines that were administered. In addition, vaccines can now be mixed, and those who can receive their booster shots are, if you had Pfizer or Moderna, if you're 65 years or older, if you're 18 or older and who live in long-term care settings, if you're over the age of 18 and you have underlying medical conditions, and if you're over the age of 18 who work or live in a high-risk setting such as first responders, education, food and agricultural workers, manufactured workers, corrections, postal service, public transit, grocery store workers, basically anybody who has interaction with members of the public. And you can get a booster 6 months after your second shot. In Johnson & Johnson's, you're eligible if you're 18 years or older, and you have to wait at least 2 months after your shot. So you can get your boosters. In addition, as you may have heard, last evening they approved the issuance of vaccines for children between the ages of 5 and 11 for Pfizer. That will begin rolling out. I know you can already make appointments. They are filling up. Though we were not, at this point in time, there is no intention for the state to have clinics per se like they did for the original rollout. That it will be either go to your doctor or you can go to a pharmacy. Vaccines.gov. It's a place to go, and they'll tell you where to go and what time you can get the vaccines for the individuals between the age of 5 and 11. So that's the update on COVID. The next is we're currently reviewing our veterans tax credit. Currently, we offer a $500 credit on individuals' properties tax bill if they've served in the following: World War I, World War II, the Korean conflict, Vietnam, Persian Gulf War, or any other war or armed conflict has occurred since May 1975, and in which the resident earned an Armed Forces Expeditionary Medal or Theater of Operations Service Medal. If an individual is disabled because of their service, they receive $700, and any surviving spouse of an individual that suffered a service-connected death also receives $700 off their tax bill. In 2016, the legislature adopted a provision that allowed an exemption to be granted if the individual served 90 days of active service instead of during specific periods of time. In 2016, the assessor reviewed information in regards to the veteran tax credit and the impact of potentially expanding to include the all veterans tax credit. There is no definitive information in regards to the number of veterans in any given municipality, so we don't know until we would adopt this. Back in the fall of 2016, they provided us with an estimated number of potential additional veterans. Since that time, roughly a dozen of their other clients have approved the all veterans tax credit. From that review of that information, it appears that the original projections were far overstated. The data shows that during the first year, expanded credits was about 5% increase in total number of veterans credits, while after several years later, it ranges from 5 to 18%, with about 11% increase in credits, which is probably attributed to the word spreading regarding its availability to previously non-qualified applicants. The town currently has 244 credits last year. Data would indicate that about 12 new applications for the 2022 tax year which should increase to about 30, so additional later on. At the current $500 rate, this would equate to about $6,000 to $15,000 respectively. If you remember in the budget, I have a line item that says war service credits. That's the number that would be changed. Nothing in the operating budget. That we would just have an additional amount of funds there. We were going to be looking at expanding it to all veterans. And we were going to be working on a plan to widen it beginning with the next tax year on April 1st. And we'll also explore expanding the amount credited. You can go up to $750 as instead of $500. So we're going to look and see what that impact would be as well. But we think it's cleaner, more equitable if you do an all veterans versus if you served during certain periods of time, especially in today's day and age when who knows what you may be doing. The next item is that the executive assistant and I are actually going to be probably implementing shortly a new meeting software. So what your Novus agenda is looking at now will be going away for town council and other boards. The new software is made by the same company as our website hosting, so it'll have a better interface and interaction between the two. I know. And it's a much easier in the back end for the department heads doing it. Also, when you're going to want to look up items, you're going to be able to click on, in the past, say a topic, and it'll pull up exactly in the meeting it was, and you can watch it. And this will also have, when we update the ordinances, you could click on it, go to the minutes and where it was approved, and show the history. So it's just going to be more integrated, and it's less expensive. So we're gonna go with that. And that's all I have tonight, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Oh,
Right, Betsy?
please.
Two things. I want to apologize. One, I'm going to ask for suspension of the rules to act on the operating budget this evening to comply with the town charter. And second, there was a new item on the agenda that was not there originally about refinancing bonds. We need to, we have an offer to refinance some bonds, and we were able to get, if we were able to get it in for the first reading tonight, we could have the second reading, they extend it for us. If we refinance these bonds, we'll have a significant savings of hundreds of thousands of dollars at this point in time. So that's why we rushed it in. We apologize, we don't usually do that, but it's well worth it.
Councillor Conley.
With respect to the expanding of the tax credit to make it an all veteran tax credit, is there any kind of role or responsibility for the council as you're looking at that?
You would have to adopt it.
Okay.
Yep.
Councillor Kuiper.
This is actually from the budget committee. I forgot to, or not budget committee, but the budget meeting from the other day. You talked about a salary study. Is that going to include the stipends paid to the fire department, volunteers?
You know, we could include it. Yep.
Because we talk about this all the time, that we should make sure that we're on par with other volunteer fire departments.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks.
I have a couple questions about the vaccine that you may or may not have the answer to, but maybe you do. So let's say I want to go get a booster, and I'm a Pfizer, and I meet those criteria. Does that mean am I taking it away from a 5 to an 11-year-old?
You are not. So 5 to 11-year-olds are getting a different dosage.
Okay.
It's getting a third of what you would receive.
All right. So
And
they're separate.
They're completely separate. We have the state, I think, was going to receive 15,000 starting this week, and then next week rolling out even more.
Okay.
So, yes, we are not taking away from children.
All right. I just wanted to make
No.
sure. And then the other question that I have is actually it's kind of personal, but it's again with the vaccine. So if you were vaccinated originally and you were under 18, but then you turn 18, can you get the booster? Like once you turn 18, do you know what I mean?
I don't believe so. I believe it goes with what your age was at the time of vaccination.
Okay.
Like one of the
I'm
things.
sure those are questions for
Yeah.
our family physician.
Yeah, one of the things
that
that we've been discussing is, okay, I have a child that's 11 turning 12 in a month.
Right.
What vaccine? And he's a very big 11-year-old. What vaccine do they get? They get the 11-year-old dosage.
Okay.
They've been testing it. There's a reason why they do that. So you don't say, well, I'm close to 12, so I'm going to give you the full one. No, you're 11, you get the 11. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
I think that's a good answer, and something that that is a little selfish for me to ask that because it's a personal question, but I do think that those questions will come up in the community.
Absolutely.
So.
Yep.
Councillor Conley.
I just have one other question about the vaccines. You mentioned that that 15,000 doses will be delivered to the state, and you've reached out to the superintendent to offer the town's assistance. But you also said that these aren't going to be done like in clinics or things like that. Kids are just going to go to their physician or whatever.
As of right now, that's what they're doing. As of right now, the state is not going to have any sites, and they're recommending going to your physician or to one of the private entities to disperse it. If you remember, the reason why we originally had those was because they couldn't. There wasn't enough manpower to do all the dispersing through all the retail locations. They didn't even have the equipment, so that's why they brought it in the other way with the military. Now it's the setup is there, the infrastructure's there, and they can do it that way.
Great. Oh, sorry. Councillor Blackstone.
Is there a possibility we could set up something in the elementary school?
I know the superintendent has discussed that with Department of Education. There is no indication of doing that at this point in time from the state.
Seeing no other questions, we will move on to committee reports. Are there any committee reports? Councillor Kuiper.
This isn't actually a committee report, but I just want to clarify something from the budget workshop about the parking committee. The budget committee, or the parking committee did not make any recommendations to the police department about hiring parking enforcement. I think that was maybe a misunderstanding. We discussed it a lot, but I was under the impression when we started the committee that they were already planning on doing that. That was like kind of underway, so I didn't ever think that was something that was like should be credited to the parking committee or anything. We spent most of our time talking about parking technology, I'll say, and the various nuances that one can get into in that discussion. And we did obviously discuss that we would need someone, a parking attendant, to collect the money, but it was not really, we didn't ever say to him, you should hire someone new. I think that was already happening. So I didn't want to make sure that we didn't get credit for something that was not our idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ward.
Yeah, the budget committee just had a new member join. Jason Stank was approved as a member of the budget committee. Other than that, we've been going over just the regular expenditures and such, looking at CIP process and such, but nothing else to report there. I just wanted to say congratulations to Jason on becoming a budget committee member.
Thank you. So now is it full?
I believe so.
Good. Any other committee reports? I am seeing none. I will say that the Energy and Environment Committee meeting was scheduled for last night, and the committee did not meet because there was not a quorum. So if anyone is interested in being a part of the Energy and Environment Committee, I put that out there to the community that we are looking for members. Right now there are 4 members, as well as myself as the town council rep. And so we are looking for 3 more members. No, 2. Sorry, I do math. 5 plus 2 is 7.
There's an application on next agenda.
Oh, good. Fantastic. Thank you. So then there's 1 more position available if anyone is interested. I'm sure that we're not the only committee looking for members, but and any open slots for committees are available on the town website. The new town website, exactly. And I encourage anyone who's interested in serving to take a look. So moving on, we have 2 resolutions in the second reading, and the first is, just pull it up, Resolution 2021-2022-10 relating to establishing a town capital asset policy. And I would accept a motion to approve that resolution.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2021-2022-10 relating to establishing a town capital asset policy.
Second.
Thank you. Town manager, did you want to speak to that at all?
This is really an accounting practice, but we have to adopt by I think Council Sanders knows this more than probably I do. We got a little dinged on this with our audit this year that we didn't have one adopted, so this is why it is being done. It's just to discuss that if we have certain assets, it outlines what our assets are and how we record them.
Are there any questions or comments for the town manager?
Does this represent any change to any policy or?
Nope.
I didn't think so. But
Yeah.
Seeing no other questions, if you could call the roll, please.
Councilor Brayback?
Aye.
Councilor Craig?
Aye.
Councilor Blackstone?
Aye.
Councilor Ward?
Aye.
Councilor Connolly?
Aye.
Councilor Sanders?
Aye.
Councilor Weinstein?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
And next is resolution, I'll just put it up, sorry, 2022-11, and it's approving the Community Revitalization Tax Relief Incentive, which is RSA 79E, for the redevelopment of the Kingman Masonic Block. And I would accept a motion to approve that.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2021-2022-11, the Kingman Masonic Block Tax Incentive under RSA 79E.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have before you this application. The applicant requested it 11 years. you saw what the financial fiscal impact would be of $120,204.44. I did increase that by 1.4% because that's what the average we've been seeing on the increase in the tax rate over the past 10 years. However, we do not traditionally give that high. We've been traditionally given three years per item. So my recommendation would be to approve a tax credit for 3 years for since the building is on the National Historic Register, 3 years since it is a prominent building in downtown, and 1 year because it is going to provide new residential units. However, it's not a significant amount, so I think 1 year is fair there. That would be current value of the property is $492,000. You have to be investing at least 50%. He's investing another $400,000, so it's more than 50%. But at the end of the day, it'll be a significant increase in preserve a building in downtown. So I'd ask that an amendment be made that we provide a 7-year agreement, 3 for, as I said, 3 for being on the National Register, 3 for being a prominent building in downtown, and 1 for residential.
I would accept a motion to make that amendment.
I'll make a motion that we amend the amount of years.
Second?
Any questions or comments regarding the change?
I just want to make sure that I'm understanding exactly what the language is that we're changing. So what I'm hearing is it sort of in that, whereas in accordance with RSA 7985, the town council grants such assessment tax relief for a period of up to 3 years instead of 5, and then they add up to 1 year, and then additional 3 years.
Well,
Is that right?
you're
Or
actually
are we
adding another
changing a
paragraph.
different
You're actually
language?
adding
Okay.
another paragraph to
That's
say
what I
this
was
is what we're doing.
Okay,
Because the applicant asked for one thing, the council's saying you're going to get this.
okay.
So,
Can I ask a question?
Please.
So this is an RSA, so this is a state law, right?
correct.
Right. Do we get compensation from
We
the
do not.
state? No. So the good people of Newmarket fund this.
Correct. But it's also a way to encourage the preservation and redevelopment of old buildings. Newmarket is the poster child for this law with the mill. So we get approached quite often about how we do it.
Councillor Sanders.
So this paragraph would go in just before the now therefore be it resolved?
Yeah.
Okay.
We can add a whereas. Council has determined 3 years for each.
3, 1.
3.
3 years, 1. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Councillor Kuiper, did you? Oh, sorry. I mean, I just want to say that I do think it's important that we've talked a lot about density. We just came from a joint meeting with the planning board, and we talked about density, and particularly in the downtown area. And so to see a building like this being revitalized, and a building, not just a building downtown, but a building with historical significance is really important as far as I'm concerned. And then we look at, like you said, at the mills as an example for how utilizing this particular RSA can really help to transform a community. I mean, I would say that the mills certainly transform the community. I don't know that this building is going to provide a transformation, but certainly allowing for more density is really important. So I think it's great to see that. Councillor Conley.
And so is the proposed amendment consistent with the tax relief that we provided for the mill?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. They each get reviewed, and the criteria. I mean, criteria is different because of impact and number of units that may be provided. It's very similar to what we provided to the blacksmith shop down at, which used to be Joyce's Kitchen, down near the river, Shanda Park. So that was one that was preserved that through 79E as well.
So just for moving forward, can we vote on the item as amended, or do we need to vote on the amendment first?
You need to vote on the
Okay.
amendment first, and then the,
So is there any more discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, if you call the roll, please.
Counselor Brayback?
Aye.
Counselor Craig?
Aye.
Counselor Blackstone?
Aye.
Counselor Ward?
Aye.
Counselor Conley?
Aye.
Counselor Sanders? Aye. Counselor Weinstein?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
So now we will vote on the resolution as amended, and I would accept a motion to approve that.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution 2021-2022-X, as amended. I'll second.
So is there any further discussion on the resolution? Seeing none, if you would call the roll.
Counselor Brayback?
Aye.
Counselor Craig?
Aye.
Counselor Blackstone?
Aye.
Counselor Ward?
Aye.
Counselor Conley?
Aye.
Counselor Sanders? Aye. Counselor Weinstein?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Next, we have 3 resolutions in the first reading. The first is Resolution 2021-2022-12, and it's the agreement to provide dispatch services to the town of Newfields. Whereas the town of Newmarket has agreed to provide dispatch services for the town of Newfields, New Hampshire, and whereas the town of Newfields and Newmarket have agreed to a 3-year agreement in the amount of $28,730.46 for the first year, and increased by the Boston CPI-U for the year beginning 2022. And now therefore be it resolved by the Newmarket Town Council that the town of Newmarket enters into a 3-year agreement expiring December 2024 for dispatch services and authorizes the town manager to sign the agreement. First reading November 3rd, 2021. The next resolution is Resolution 2022-13, approval of the fiscal year 2023 budget. I'll read it. So whereas the town manager submitted his budget for the next fiscal year to the town council on October 15th, 2021, and whereas the town council, after reviewing the proposed budget and making various changes, desires to forward the municipal budget committee a proposed budget for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2023. Now therefore be it resolved by the Newmarket Town Council that the annual budget for the town of Newmarket for fiscal year 2023, submitted to the town council by the town manager, recommends to the municipal budget committee for its review the following appropriations: General Fund $9,333,382, Special Funds $1,707,396, and the Enterprise Water and Sewer Funds $4,124,763 for a total of $15,165,541. First reading November 3rd, 2021, and I would accept a motion to suspend the rules so that we can act on this resolution this evening.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any questions or comments about suspending the rules? Seeing none, if you would call the roll, please.
Counselor Brayback?
Aye.
Counselor Craig?
Aye.
Counselor Blackstone?
Aye.
Counselor Ward?
aye.
Counselor Conley? Aye. Counselor Sanders? Aye. Counselor Weinstein?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
So next I would accept a motion to approve Resolution 2021-2022-13.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2021-2022-13, adopting the fiscal year 2023 budget. Second?
Are there any questions or comments? We've obviously spent a lot of time on Saturday going through the budget, so but now would be the time to ask any additional questions. Councilor Cooper.
I have a general question that I think probably a lot of people have, but maybe don't ask it. And if there was a way to make the budget go down, what would it be aside from like eliminating the fire department or something? You know what I mean? Is there like, because I think people always kind of think that there's some magic button that you could press, or you know, if we had this type of housing, or if we built a factory here, or is there anything like that realistically we could promote or do that would potentially, I mean, aside from, like I said, cutting services?
No.
Okay, that's the thing.
The amount of development that would have to do to, I think we figured out one point in time, and this was before the boom now, that it was like, I want to say $200 million worth of development would almost equal maybe $1 on the tax rate, but that's a huge amount.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it gets to the point where you do that kind of stuff, you may sell the town part. It's difficult. I mean, the other thing that does help is, which it doesn't really help the taxpayer, but the increased property values helps us with additional revenues. So, unless we have a major change in the way things structured, no, not really.
Thank you.
No, I mean, I suppose you look at other communities or even around us. I mean, look at Epping. They've got all kinds of development, but their tax rate, I don't know what it is now, but it was pretty similar to ours.
Yeah, I was the town administrator of Epping when Walmart opened, and they thought that was going to be the silver bullet, because they were sold that it was going to be the silver bullet, and I said no, it's not. Your taxes aren't going to be lowered because a Walmart opens up. It's going to help slow the burden, but it's not going to reduce your taxes. And there's always, there's still spending out there. And when it happened, it was also the year they passed a bond for the school. So they thought it was going to be perfect. They're like, no, that doesn't work that way.
Just a comment, as long as we're a state that relies on property taxes to fund services, we're going to be in a position of paying high property taxes. And the only way I can see around that is if the state were to implement a broad-based tax.
Right.
And that's not gonna happen anytime soon.
Yeah, no.
Right. Councilor Raybeck.
I just wanted to also say, I think when we were discussing the budget, at first I was having a hard time with how big of an increase it felt like. But reviewing it, it's a lot of like making positions full-time and addressing staffing. And I think if we want to attract talent and retain talent, which is so hard to do right now, everywhere you're hearing, everyone's understaffed at all levels of employment anywhere. So I think it's going to be really important as far as being able to continue to provide the services that we do provide and continue to grow them the way they have been.
I could just add to that. This morning we had a meeting with our engineering firm, our contract engineering firm, about customer service issues. And I put it on the table that the budget has a full-time engineer in there, and they said that's probably something that should have been done a few years ago. So.
And I mean, I was thinking about this earlier today. I think, in recent conversations, the MRI study has been brought up a bunch of times, and is that available on the website?
It is.
Okay. So I just encourage anyone to, if you haven't seen the MRI study, to look at that, because it really does highlight it highlights what we do well, which we do a lot really well, but our deficiencies are around trying to be too lean, and that's been a real problem for a long time. So this budget starts to address that. It doesn't completely address it, and I think that this will be something that we will be talking about next year and the year after that, and probably the year after that. So I definitely support this budget. I appreciate the work that the town manager has put into this, the work that the department heads have put into trying to find that balance between meeting the needs that they see every day and understanding the needs of the taxpayers in in Newmarket. And I think that that's always a fine line, and I really appreciate everyone working so hard to find that balance. So I am not seeing any other comments. So if you could call the roll, please.
Councilor Briggs?
Aye.
Councilor Piper?
Aye.
Councilor Blackstock?
Aye.
Councilor Ward?
Aye.
Councilor Conlon?
Aye.
Councilor Sanders?
Aye.
Councilor Weinstein?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
I also want to say that it's, and this is just as an aside, it's pretty remarkable. My first several years on the council, our budget process, we cut thousands of dollars every year. And I think we've gotten, and I think that's why we're at the place that we're at now, because we've gotten to a point where there is nothing left to cut. And I appreciate the work that had been done. I didn't always agree with it, but I appreciate the work that had been done by previous councils and councilors, and it was really hard to sit in front of Chief Sear and say, no, I'm sorry, we're gonna cut your postage. and every line item, and we went through every line item like that. And so it's really a testament again to the work that the town manager has done and the department heads have done to maintain that budget and maintain the work that has been done by previous councils. So I'm sure that there are some councilors sitting in TV land who would not appreciate the increase, but it is thanks to them that we are where we are. So the next resolution we have.
May want to read it by title only. It's pretty lengthy.
Those are my
Legalese.
favorite. It's Town Council Resolution 2021-2022-14, and that's the resolution authorizing the issuance of refunding a bond. And it is a lengthy resolution. I encourage anyone interested in that to read it online. It will be available there. Is there any correspondence to the Town Council?
There's none.
And are there any closing comments by town councilors? Councilor Kuiper.
I just want to talk for a quick second about non-attached ADUs because it was on the agenda for our meeting with the planning board, but we didn't have time to cover it. When I first joined the ZBA in 2015, the first zoning board meeting I was on, the first gentleman who came before us asked he wanted permission to build a apartment in his father's barn because his father was getting old and he wanted to take care of him while he got old. Now the barn was a couple feet away from the house. They weren't physically attached. So the ZBA voted, I did not, but the other members of the ZBA voted to not let him do that. And the town planner said, this is something that other towns allow because we want people to age in place, the elderly people don't have to go to retirement homes, et cetera, et cetera. And it seems to me the sentiment of the ZBA was, we would love to let you can't because it's against the rules. Since then, I don't think anyone has ever gotten a non-attached ADU approved by the ZBA. And I've seen a number of people who have asked me about it before I was on the council and said, hey, did you know that because my garage isn't attached to my house, I can't put an apartment on it? I've seen people on Facebook saying, I'm making a petition so that we can vote on this at the next election. It is against our rules. You cannot have a citizen-sponsored ballot initiative. So, and I have brought this up with, I think, every representative, and there's been 3 with the planning board. And I guess the biggest issue I have with this is that when you have no system for people to address their grievances, it's frustrating for people because, this is something that doesn't make a lot of sense to people. And I get why some people are against it, I guess, but I don't really. And we've had meetings on it, we've had public hearings about it, and there was people that talked against it, and I still don't quite understand the argument. And many towns around us, Durham and Exeter and Farmington, have changed their rules to allow non-attached ADUs. And I guess, just generally, it's something that I wish that we had a chance to talk about with the planning board. but it's something that I think, like it or not, we should have some method for us or a subcommittee or the planning board, someone voting on whether or not that's allowed. And I still, 2.5 years on here, do not understand how that is supposed to happen.
Councilor Carver, for those of us not on the planning board, can you put words to ADU?
Oh, sorry. Sorry, that's my bad. Accessory dwelling unit.
Okay, thank you.
So if your house has a garage that's attached, you can put a apartment in it. If it's not, you can't. And it doesn't matter if it's 2 inches away or 3 inches away. And I've talked to other town planners who have told me that they don't think it's ever been tested in court. Because if you nail the board, you know,
Right.
is it attached now?
Yeah.
If there's a deck, is it attached now? If your electric wire goes, is it attached?
Maybe tie it with a rope.
So just to go through process.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
kind of more what I'm
Process.
getting to is the process.
First of all, we are a representative form of government. If an individual of the public has an issue with the law, they contact their representative, which is the town council. The council then, and remember, we're also in a situation where the planning board is an independently elected body. So they could also elect planning board members or talk to them as their representatives to change the ADU regulations. If the council wishes to change the ordinance, the best way would be a letter from the council as a whole to the planning board asking them to address this. They can tell the council to pound sand, but the council asks them because they are an independent body. If the planning board does say pound sand, the council does still have it in their purview. They have the right to amend any ordinance. So you could do it without the planning board. Would I ever recommend that? Absolutely not. I would hope we get somewhere else before there. But I think the first step is if this is a wish of the council, that a letter is addressed from the council to the planning board to look into this issue. That's procedurally that way. You're right, we are not a town meeting form of government. So we do not have the petition process. It's contacting their counselors. Like you contact your member of Congress or you contact your state representatives. It's the same way. The council represents them. So that's what I would recommend that the council, if that's the wish of the full council, is to write the planning board. And the other thing is to have them contact their planning board members. That's their elected officials too, much like the councilors are. As long as we have an elected planning board, they answer directly to the voters.
Councilor Sanders, did you have your hand raised?
I would agree with John on this. I don't understand why if your building is 3 inches away, you're forbidden to having, especially where we're now aging in place, this state is graying, more people are looking for alternative living arrangements. Even if it's the family moves into that house and puts Nana or Papa in the assisted dwelling unit, I think we need to make more allowances for that. So I'd be more than willing to go along with John's idea of sending a letter to the planning board.
Councilor Ward.
Yeah, I also just want to echo, like, they've already said everything on it, but I also echo that I really think it's a good way to expand housing in town without actually having to build more housing in town, and, it really brings more, I think it's a good idea.
Which is, I think, what Councilor
Yeah,
Blackstone.
I was gonna say, the planning board is
Right.
more than happy to do this. One of the members of the planning board said they would personally start a subcommittee to explore it. As you know, for the planning board, they have to have public hearings. You can't just snap your fingers and make these changes. Right? But they're more than willing to do it. And as you heard tonight from Eric, if we were to send a letter to them, so we take a vote tonight. If the majority of us think it's a good idea, then you can send a letter on behalf to Eric, and they'd be more than happy to do it.
And that was what I was trying to communicate at our meeting earlier, although we didn't talk specifically about ADUs, I think that it's safe to say that the council as a whole wants to pursue various zoning, would certainly entertain various zoning changes. So I'm more than happy to draft a letter and send, along with the town manager, and send that off to the planning board if that is the will of the council. It's never something that I would just do. Before I could just kind of poll the council, but Councilor Conley, did you have something that you wanted to add?
You don't get why people are kind of speaking against it, but you kind of do.
when I don't know very much about this issue, so when people speak against it, what are they saying? What are they saying is
I think
problematic?
the direct quote from one member of the public was it would change the complexion of the town. I don't know exactly what that means,
If,
but
if I can, I will play the devil's advocate in what the common, these were originally referred to as mother-in-law apartments. That was, so what you would do is you have somebody age in place until they could no longer live in that facility, and then they'd go away somewhere. Not saying where, but they'd go away. So then you have an apartment on a piece of land that is in a residential area, empty. The argument was those then turn into apartments and rental property, and then you have multifamily units in a residential area. And that would also have more vehicles, more parking, those kind of items in a residential area. So they've tried to have it only on as attached dwellings because you're more apt to not rent out something that's in your home than if it's offside like a few hundred yards away on a barn. So that's why they make that argument.
Okay.
But just to be clear, it's an owner-occupied building. You can't,
Right.
you can't rent out your house and the ADU. You
Right.
have to, the owner has to live in a house, and then the ADU is attached. It's not a rental.
Another thing that has come up, I know in York, my brother was looking for a house in York, and a couple times I'd see a house, I was like, 380, oh my God, and I'd click on it, and it was actually someone's garage that they had turned into a house
Right.
that they were now selling, because they had condoized both units, but I believe that's been banned in the state of New Hampshire, but you can put that into the ordinance anyway, in case the law was ever to change, that it has to be owner occupied, it has to be, can't be condoized, you know, yeah.
And the third,
that's the role of the
the new
Yeah.
one is, okay, now I have this accessory dwelling unit, empty. VRBO and Airbnb look very nice at this point and start renting them out that way. That's very common too in communities.
Who can ban that in ordinance?
We don't know that yet.
No, okay.
And I would also just add that I think that at the time that this was discussed originally, well, I think the times have changed a little bit, and when we were looking, I don't say we, I wasn't involved, but we as a community, we were looking at this issue. Our housing stock is like the rental rate. We have a lot of rental properties, and there are, I'm sure, still people in the community who think that we have too many rental properties. And the push was for single-family homes rather than more rental properties. I think that mindset has changed. It has for me. I mean, I see the value, not that I probably gave it a lot of thought 10 years ago, but I see the value in having, these, like what we talked about this evening. Like, I do think single family is important. I think, the multifamily dwellings are important. So I don't know if the community has changed. I have no idea what the community thinks at this point. But that's part of the planning board process, and why I think it's so important that the planning board go through that public hearing process and make sure that all voices are heard. Because I do, just because it makes complete sense to me or it makes complete sense to this body doesn't mean that it's going to make complete sense to the community as a whole. So, do we just want to do a show of hands for if you would want me to draft that letter with the town manager, and okay, perfect, then we'll do that. Any other closing comments?
Sorry, I have one more.
Oh, sure,
I just want
yes,
to follow up on
please.
that by saying that the ADU conversation, which had been ongoing, also came up again because I had a meeting with our state senator, Rebecca Perkins Quokka. Anyway, Rebecca Quokka. And we were talking about a lot of the things that they're doing in Portsmouth with housing. And she had suggested that we start a housing committee, commission, or task force. It's interesting because Portsmouth, in the discussion, is their planning board is appointed. So I don't know if that's puts them in a different situation with committees like this. It's sort of a planning board, sort of a town council thing, but
You have control over the plan, you have control over the members, but you didn't have control over their votes.
so they're doing the same,
Yeah.
job. Okay,
It is rare in New Hampshire to have an elected planning board,
it is okay. I thought so.
especially in a council. I think we are the only elected planning board with a council form of government.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And then she put me in touch with, and I'd met her before. She's coming to my restaurant, Sarah Reitzman, who runs the Workforce Housing Coalition of the Greater Seacoast, which is this really cool organization. It's been around 20 years. It was started by, I can't remember, it was a big hotel chain, or not a hotel chain, but a big hotel in Portsmouth that basically didn't have enough employees 20 years ago and said, we're going to start this thing and we're going to fund it. And her funding is mainly grants, that sort of thing. But she works with towns. She's worked with Exeter and Durham, setting up these housing commissions. And basically they have just a lot of free resources, which, she does basically what the guy did downstairs, but for free. They have architects who volunteer to say, hey, if we took this zone and we changed it to allow more density, this is what this is what we would get out of that for taxes and people and how much you could live there, versus if it was single family housing. She's done work with towns all around up to South Berwick, and she lives in Newmarket. So she's around all the time, and I don't know if it would make sense to even get her here to come and talk to everyone, because she just got a lot of resources. She's got connections with she works a lot with this Stratford Regional Planning Commission, and they have got a lot of funding now to do these, to look at a zone and say, hey, how could we increase, if you want more workforce housing, how do we go about doing it? So I think she within her organization, and she doesn't always work with housing commissions, but that's, I think, the main mechanism. So it's just something I thought I'd bring up, if people want to look into it, or if we want her to come here and talk to us about what she does. But it's just, it's a free resource, so I figured, why not?
I think it's safe to say that I know that, I think just based on the conversation that we had earlier and even with the planning board earlier, I think it's probably safe to say that the council would be interested in either, I don't know what the best way to do that is, whether we hear from Sarah directly or whether we draft a resolution to form a housing commission. I don't know exactly how that would work.
It's usually something that would be coming from planning. I think what you heard tonight was the planning board, again, as I've said, was gun shy because they just kept getting knocked down by the council. They had these ideas, and it was that, again, what happens when you have different election of different bodies. The policy, the one who makes the policy doesn't always agree with the one who enacts the policy. They didn't want to bring anything up. I think they got from the council that we're willing to look at these things. It should come from them because they're the ones who have the time for the subcommittee. The council should be the group that looks over the overall policy for the community, not just the housing issue. The council can sit on the commissions or on a committee to help it, but that's what the planning board is there for. They're to look at this. Council looks at everything. Much like if you flip the sides, I don't get involved in the day-to-day planning issues. That's why we have a planner, but I oversee the entire operations. So I think that's something that could go to I think it would be great to suggest the planning board meet with her to discuss those kind of items.
So would it make sense for Councillor Kuiper to reach out to Eric Boderman and the chair of the planning committee and kind of work on that?
Yeah, I'll talk to her and then see if she's got how that would work. Yeah.
Yep. Great. And then I just have one comment, and sorry, Councillor Conley.
I'm not sure actually where this goes, but I just wanted to follow up on the Neil Mill Road Trail.
Still working on it.
Okay.
You try. So it was a wood coming by.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. And then I just wanted to remind everyone that there is a meeting tomorrow that everyone is invited to. It's I forgot to mention it during our joint meeting last night or earlier with the planning board, but it's from 4:30 to 6, and we have two individuals who are from UNH, and they'll be presenting about coastal resiliency and how, specifically how Newmarket will be impacted in the coming years. The work that we've done and how we'll be impacted in the coming years because of climate change and sea level rise. So it's via Zoom. The registration information is available on the town website. It's also been emailed probably a couple of times at this point. But I definitely encourage anybody who is available to tune in. We will be recording it, so if you are not available, it will be accessible probably within a couple days or so on the town website, I imagine. So, and anybody interested in the public, so it's not just for committee members, but anybody interested in the public who wants to attend virtually, you do have to pre-register. So we just ask you to find that link and register and learn about coastal resiliency from people who have been working on it for years. So it's really impressive, the amount of work that has been done. And I just want to also say, and I'll say this tomorrow, but Dale, the reason that we're really doing this, the person who brought it forward is Dale Pike, who was a counselor for many years and chair of the council, and has been just really active in several different groups, all related to the lamprey and coastal resiliency and just the oceans and climate change. And we're really appreciative of his efforts. I'm very appreciative of his efforts in making all this happen. And that was all I had. So I'm not seeing any other comments. So our next meeting is November 17th, and seeing nothing else, I will consider us adjourned.
Just asking if I
Thank
might.
you.
Yep.